Hello everybody, it's the 28th of July today, and I'm starting a new playlist with this tree. This is a Japanese maple full of weeds that I've grown from seed. I think it was 2017, 2018 that I started it from a packet of 10 Japanese maple seeds, and I selected this one out of the resulting 4 or 5 seedlings that I got because it had the best autumn colour, and it's been part of a group of Japanese maples that are in a playlist that will be linked below and in the end screen. And I'm now going to start this one in a playlist all of its own, and so this will be a timey-wimey video starting now and probably culminating in the autumn. In amongst all this foliage, there's quite a nice trunk with some quite nice taper and movement that I've built up over the years, and the tree is growing quite well. You may be thinking, what on earth is this? But if you haven't seen those earlier group videos, you won't know that I was growing a sacrifice branch. However, said sacrifice branch is getting, well, I think the term is out of hand, and is completely taking over and making itself, well, quite frankly, making itself a blooming nuisance. Probably doesn't look too bad, a bit chunky, but if I pan across, and slightly up, as you can see, the said sacrifice branch is taking over. It's also growing up very tall, which means it's going to begin to cause some problems in this area as it becomes the apically dominant point of the plant. So I'm going to have to deal with that. Quite apart from anything else, it's taken up an awful lot of space, and I tried putting it on the far left hand side of a bench, but of course it just hung over the side, and every time I walked around the edge of that bench I was catching it and threatening to pull it off the bench. So I have another little branch here. Let's get rid of that. That's been growing out far too far, so we'll just lose that one. What I don't want to do is to cut it right back to the trunk at this time of year. It could cause some quite spectacular bleeding. It's probably going to bleed a little anyway, but there is a little tip that can help with that. No, it's not a boiled egg, it's actually a potato, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a small slither of potato and pop it there for a second, and then I'm going to, using my straight edge, relatively straight edge shears, I'm going to chop it right back like so, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that piece of potato on the end, if I can get it to stab its way in. Okay, now that may seem like an odd thing to do, but it doesn't need to stay on there very long, but the starch content of the potatoes will actually help seal the wound and coagulate and stop the sap from flowing, and it apparently works very well. I've not tried it before, but I heard it on one of the gardening shows that I radio phone-in shows that I listen to, whereby they recommended this as a way to stop a tree bleeding if you have to prune it and it bleeds excessively. So giving it a try. As I say, That's going to make it sit nicer on the bench. I'll probably still catch myself on that little piece, but hey ho. Now that I've done it, I'm actually thinking probably would have been a better idea to go back in further. So why not? In for a penny, in for a pound. There we go. So there we have it. I've been pinching the top of this tree as it's growing out. We'll look in on it later in the year and see its autumn colour. It was a spectacular red, or is usually a spectacular red, and then come the autumn we'll look at, well, come the winter rather, we'll look at removing that large sacrificial branch and some general structural pruning and tidying up. So it's the 6th of September, and time I did a bit more trimmage on this, well, I've been calling it my superb red, so I guess that's what it is, and I've just been letting it grow on a bit, and I'm now going to just shorten back some of these extra long growths. The potato did its job. We didn't get much in the way of bleeding, and the tree didn't seem to suffer too much during that hot spell, which is nice. And I sometimes get a second or third even flush of growth this time of year, so I'm going to give it a trim back fairly hard. As I'm sure I said in earlier bits of this video, this tree was grown from seed, and there is a playlist. So it was originally part of a playlist of 5 different trees, and is now branched out into this separate playlist of its own. It's going to need a lot more work over the next few years to make it into a nice bonsai, but I think in there somewhere under all that foliage we have an interesting trunk with some interesting movement. I'm going to need to take off this large piece that was a sacrifice branch. Entire section will need to go, but I will remove that next spring so that it will leave quite a large scar, and that way it will have the whole season to heal that large scar. I probably said this before, but one issue I have with the timey-wimey videos is that I don't always recall what was said and what wasn't said in earlier videos, so I sometimes end up repeating myself, but I'm sorry if I do that. But I'll try and edit it out if I can. I'll put this back on the bench and look at it as we head into autumn, see if it gives me that superb red that it's given me before. Okay, so it's the 3rd of November today, and well, this Japanese maple that I chose to focus on because in other years it's had such a glorious red colouring in the autumn. It's still half green. It has already lost a lot of leaves, but instead of going red this year, they've mostly gone, well, the sun is bleaching that out terribly, they've mostly gone this gorgeous shade of yellow, although I have got some burgundies and some oranges and some reds coming. So I don't know, it's going to be a race now whether it'll drop all its leaves before it turns. I'm certainly not going to get the gorgeous red show that I'd hoped, but again, I'm not disappointed with the colour that I have got, and things could always be worse. I could have killed the tree and I haven't done that. So what I am going to do is put a piece of wire on this particular branch, which is one of the lower branches, but it's coming far too far forward for my taste. So I'm just going to reuse an old piece of wire, as I always do. Hook that on there. If you're a new viewer, I often say, don't look to me for your wiring tips. I'd get laughed out of any show I chose to enter, although I don't choose to enter them. If I tried to show a tree wired this way, my wiring is at best down and dirty, gets the job done, doesn't always look neat and tidy. Rather like my handwriting and what I was always told in English at school. Must try harder to be neater. But, as I say, I often wire much more loosely than the books would describe. Let me show you what I mean by that. Not sure how well that's showing up, but I've deliberately used a thicker wire than is strictly necessary to bend this branch, and there is a gap there that betwixt branch and wire that I can actually put one fork of these tweezers through, which means that the tree can grow more significantly before the wire cuts in. Again, like I say, the books would tell you to wrap your wire snugly to the bark and strictly 45-degree angles and use the correct thickness wire, blah blah blah. But I'm not your guy if that's the sort of wiring you're after. I can feel some eyes upon me, so bear with me while I turn the camera around. And immediately he's gone, quite sprightly, for a arthritic old dog who's in end stage now, according to the vet. Well, back in September they said he might not see this Christmas, though he might see next, which is a bit vague in terms of a diagnosis. I'm fairly convinced he will see this Christmas. He will be thoroughly spoiled, I think. Anyway, back to the tree. So, come spring, I will probably reduce this branch, possibly even back as far as here, to bring the tree back in a bit more compact, and I think I may even lose this piece that's coming up here. But that'll be a decision I'll make then, and it'll be an easier decision to make when the tree is bare. In addition, the remainder of this sacrifice branch will need to be removed, but I will be doing all those things in the spring, just before the tree comes into growth, to minimise the amount of time that it's going to sit with open wounds and things. Who knows whether we will have a harsh winter or a mild winter. Certainly, as they say, it's the 3rd of November today, and normally the trees would have been at this stage towards the beginning of October, and by now would have dropped all their leaves usually, but who knows what that means. There's many a sip, no, what's the word? There's many a slip twixt cup and sip, cup and lip. One of those old sayings that says don't count your chickens. Anyway, I shall leave this one here with a quick 360. I'm sure I said earlier in the video, but this tree has grown from seed over the past, I'm not even sure now, 6-7 years, maybe 8. Yeah, around then. There, I'll ask you to please do all the normal YouTube things, the liking, the subscribing if you're not a subscriber, and the commenting below. But most of all, look after yourselves. Stay safe, everybody.